Hello, I'm Steve Bell, Chairman and CEO of Tennessee Bank and Trust. We are a privately owned bank with offices in Cool Springs and Green Hills. We are a business that happens to be a bank, and our customers tell us the difference is clear.
Today we're going to talk about motivation, and I think one of the things we need to set up is what is motivation and why do we care if employees are motivated? And when we were thinking about this, I thought, well, what is it we want them to do and why? So why would we want employees to be motivated? To do what and for what reason?
Well, if employees just show up every day and all they do is just show up, are we really getting their best work? Chances are we aren't. Zig Ziglar used to say that motivation is temporary. You need to keep doing it. You need to keep doing it. It's temporary, but so is bathing and cutting the grass. But he thought we ought to keep doing both anyway.
You know, I read recently about construction. I know you build homes, a construction company, and they felt that all their people were siloed. So what they do now is, even though one person does the plumbing and one person does this, that, and the other, when the job is finished, they take everybody out to the job and show them the finished product, so they can see how important each piece was. And I think that probably works in all of our businesses.
We actually have a meeting on Monday morning. Everybody's required to be at the meeting. And we want everybody to see what everybody else does. And everybody talks about, what are we doing to produce the house in time? Is it getting started in time? Has a customer selection been made? And so having them all together as a group once a week makes a big difference.
How long have y'all been doing that, Dave?
Numerous years, really. And we find it's very, very productive to get everybody together.
Speaking of building, there's this famous story of Sir Christopher Wren, who was the architect that designed St. Paul's Cathedral in London after the Great Fire. This very famous story of he went around to the site, and here was this stonemason who was pounding away on the stone, and Sir Wren asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Can't you see? I'm here banging on a piece of stone." And so he goes to the different part of the site and asked another stonemason, said, "So what are you doing?" He said, "I'm helping you build the greatest building, greatest cathedral in the world." And so this understanding of what the vision is, I think, is really important. You talk about motivation, that as leaders we have to motivate and have to give vision. And so there's got to be this idea of that we're in this together. We're sharing this vision, that we're all a part of whatever the venture is, that you've got to be in this together. You've got to have all the way up and down, everyone on board and buy in to what is the vision. And the leaders have to keep saying that vision and giving that motivation to the either employees or students, as in our case, and teachers as educators. So I think that's really important, that a shared vision.
I agree. And Roddy, we were talking earlier, some of the things the bank does, or what kinds of anecdotes do you have about effective ways to motivate and engage?
One time we recently went to a loan closing, and one of the administrative assistants went with us, and it was flawless. Everything was great. All the right documents were there. There were no mistakes, and the customer it was the smoothest one that had ever happened. And our crew always tries to do a good job, but the fact that she was going to go facing with the customer and be involved in the process, it made her realize the impact of us doing it right and shaking it down before we went to see the customer. And this person happens to do a great job anyway, but she came back and spread the message.
Becky, let's talk about leadership a little bit, because I know that that's something you're intimately involved in. How do you engage the leaders, or what happens to turn a person from a doer to a leader?
Meaning is very important to people. Meaningful work. What is the meaning of what I do? So by understanding the larger context, how does it fit with the business strategy, then all of a sudden what I'm doing becomes meaningful. If we don't think that what we're doing makes a difference, there's very little motivation. And in fact, after a while, it can actually have the opposite effect.
One of the things that we do, we have a company called Guild Quality, and every single customer will always be contacted after the sale. You know, tell them that if it's anything at less than excellence, we want to know what it is. We want to know it up front. To get those surveys back and to be able to show a superintendent or a salesperson or a mortgage coordinator, whoever it is, what that customer said about them, it makes a big difference. And testimonials from the customers, we also ask for testimonials all the time. So they wear them like badges of honor.
And apparently that's part of their performance review in your case, and their
yes.
bonus structure, so they are financially rewarded as well. What are some things that a company can do when times are not good? What kinds of things have worked to motivate people when money is not going to be part of the picture?
Dan Pink's done some very interesting research that came out in Drive. I think that was published in 2010. And we've always believed that carrots worked. And it's the if-then approach. If you do this, I will, I'll keep dangling this in front of you. But if you do this, then you will get paid. Then you will get this benefit. And what Dan's research shows is that's not necessarily so. And the whole idea that if you have very routine work, that those carrots still work. Because you can actually, get the widget machine to crank faster if you get paid more by your productivity. Artists do better when they do their art, whether it's sculpture, painting, pottery, whatever. They do better when they do it for the sake of the art. But when it's a commission job and they've already been paid for that job, their performance actually goes down. You would think that if you got paid up front or paid on delivery that it would go up. But they actually do better art, so the art people say. It's better art when they do it for the sake of the art, hoping to sell it at some point.
This is a real critical issue in education, merit paid as opposed to tenure. But really what we have to work towards is a sense of adventure, that our teachers are on this journey with us. And so I'm reminded of Ernest Shackleton, who put this ad out. Ernest Shackleton was the explorer that went to Antarctica and had the ship, the Endurance, that was one of the most well-executed disasters of all time. He put this ad out and it said, "Come join this journey. Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success." 5,000 people showed up.
Wow.
Because they wanted to engage in something that was going to be bigger than themselves, be a part of a team. So we're constantly reminding teachers and students that we're in this together. We are on this wild, grand adventure. And so teachers are not there because they're getting paid a lot. They're there because they love kids.
Thank goodness, because teachers, that's just, I think, such an underpaid profession and such an important part of our culture. And the heart of a teacher is a wonderful thing to have.
No question. Absolutely.
And the heart comes first, I think.
Yeah.
That's right.
You asked about bonuses. When the downturn hit, we went to all of our employees and said there would be no bonuses. We had to take them away. And we brought them into a room and said, listen, we have to survive. We're in a survival mode. And so bring them in and explaining the situation, painting a full, very clear, visible picture of what is going on with the company, that we're going to make it, that we're going to be consistent. They don't have to worry about getting laid off. But at the same time, we have to make certain critical decisions. And having them be part of that decision, explain it clearly to them what we're doing, made a big difference.
What we try to do, and Roddy does a great job of this day to day, is kind of use who we are to our advantage. We try to we want to make it fun and competitive. These types of folks are successful, they're used to being successful, and they're used to being measured. So it's nothing for them on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis to come in against other folks, and as we show their successes and their counterpart successes, be it individually or be it teamwork, that without a financial component is made remarkable strides for us. The folks that are successful on a day-to-day, month-to-month basis, at that point in time, you need to figure out a way to promote them, not horizontally, but vertically. And as their peers see that, it makes a remarkable amount of difference.
Let's talk a little bit about how you take an organization and yes, you have your own personal goals, but sometimes those goals don't generate the kind of revenue that you can give back to the employee, so you have to look at the entire company.
This whole topic is sort of a complex mix because people are very different in how they're motivated. And so some individuals are actually not motivated by goals. Other folks give me a goal. If I don't have a goal, I don't know what to do. One way to think about the monetary, any kind of monetary incentives or rewards is that that alone is just not going to do it.
Now, we look at it as fairness, you know, what's fair. The short-term bonus is always there on a quarterly basis, but we do an annual bonus based on how the company does. And we try to balance it. And to be consistent and fair with your employees is probably one of the most important things when it comes to money.
And I would think, you know, at first when you were talking, I was thinking, sure, fair, just be fair. But it depends on what motivates you, because
how do we define
somebody,
fair?
well, and you know, you might have someone who says, well, I am the guy who brought in 20 and I did work twice as long as the guy who brought in 10 because he didn't have that opportunity. And I wonder if there is any generational differences. I was interested, you know, because people are not motivated the same. And when you said some people are motivated by goals, and if they don't have a goal, they don't know what to do. Is there a generational difference? Are you all finding that any particular group is more goal-focused than others?
Do you want to work with an organization where there's one way to get paid or 5 ways to get paid? I want to get paid based on my efforts. I want to get paid based on my team's efforts. If I help another team, I want to get paid for that. And if I meet organizational goals, I want to get paid for that as well. And why not have it set up to where people get paid in multiple ways? You get bonus if your team does well. Well, what's that going to do to your individual effort? It's probably going to go up. But so many people say, we want you to work as teams, but we're not going to acknowledge team effort. We're not going to acknowledge teamwork. We're not going to pay you for team effort. But go out there and work as a team. We call them the sales team. Really? You send 6 out at a time? I don't think so. You know, it's the sales team when they're here together, which is what, an hour a week? The rest of the time they're out working one-on-one. You know, and people that make up those sales teams, if you're going to be a salesperson, aren't you going to be motivated by the close of the sale? You love prospecting, or somebody else does that for you. But you know, you want to get.
Yeah, and aren't
get that
salespeople
individual.
motivated by the start to finish? Okay, I found this potential client, I did the work, I closed the deal, now give me the money.
Yeah.
And
Same
also,
day is good too. Same day is good.
Same day is good. And also with sales teams, they also compete with each other. I mean, there's a healthy competition in sales.
Hope it's healthy.
Hopefully.
Hope it's healthy competition. You can have extremely unhealthy competition on a sales team as well. You can have significant winners and losers. Pretty soon all the winners are always winning and the losers are always losing.
Becky, do you think that there are, or anyone, do you think there are certain characteristics of a person who can be motivated or who can appreciate being part of something bigger?
There are formal ways to do that through their assessment instruments that can do that. So a leader may decide to, as a team, have people complete something like that and have some discussion about it. But without that, there's just the ordinary conversation and getting to know the people that work for you and that you work with. Recognition is a great example because people vary on whether they want recognition or acknowledgement.
And it's sometimes hard to detect. I'm thinking right now, sometimes we're sitting around our board table and I will call out someone and say, I just want to recognize Rebecca or whoever it is. And this blush, you know, just this hives and things. And I think, gosh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? You know, is she excited or if I just, you know, have I distracted her for the next 5 hours? But it is difficult to try to judge that.
I have a story from commercial real estate. Well, it's commercial real estate. They develop shopping centers for third-party owners primarily, 2- and 3-year projects, and they would get a big whopping bonus check at the end of the project. Well, you know, if you've been working on anything for 3 years, the bonus check's going to be pretty big. What he would do, he would write a very heartfelt and meaningful letter and mail it home with the check. So that sounded like a good idea, but what he was missing was the opportunity to tell the rest of the team, this is what we want more of. This is why she's getting a check. And this is what you can do if you want one too, was basically the story. And he was missing all that. And I asked him why he was mailing these letters and checks home. He says, well, because not everybody wants to be in the spotlight. I said, you've got salespeople, they're on commission, You think they don't want to be in the spotlight? You think they don't want to be noticed? Well, what it turned out to be, he was an extreme introvert and did not want to be noticed. He didn't like having the spotlight shine on himself. So what did he assume? That everybody was like him. So he mailed the checks home with the letter to make it as low-key as he possibly could. But he's missing the opportunity to tell the story and to let his salespeople that finished that deal, you know, they missed the opportunity to celebrate.
Right. Celebration, that's a big incentive, I guess, or motivator or reward when there can't be dollars. And I guess celebration around the end product where everybody, sort of like taking them out to the construction site, that's a celebration.
We're always talking about in our athletic teams that the student body, even if you're not out there on the field or on the court, you're still part of this team.
Something I learned a long time ago was that I would have different city presidents, and we would go to those cities and review on a monthly basis and walk the product, see what they're doing, look at the numbers. And I would, on the way back, dictate a memo and send it back to them. And sometimes there would be pretty harsh memos. You know, they weren't doing things right. It was putting it black and white. And I can tell you, I know one of the gentlemen, he came out one day, he had every one of those memos. You know when he gave them to me? When he resigned.
Ooh, wow.
He was one of my best people. And so what I learned was that, you know, those things were like, you know, just scarlet letters to him. It was just really crushing. And so from now on, whenever I do those type of criticisms, I do it face to face.
Verbally.
Those letters don't come back to haunt me.
Well, speaking of letters, I heard a story, I think it was the producer of the Beacon series telling me that there was a CEO who had started with 12 employees, and every year at Christmas he wrote a personal note to each one of the 12 employees. And today he has thousands and thousands, I forget how many, and he still writes a personal note once a year to every single employee. And of course that has to be a huge part of their culture.
Sure.
And you know, who gets the time for that? Somebody who cares about their employees. How do you do bonding, and how do you build that camaraderie that also motivates the team play?
I work with Andy Bailey at Petrocoach. We work on quarterly planning with organizations, and you know, annual goals, quarterly priorities, individual goals tied into the corporate priorities for the quarter, and then there's a quarterly theme. And what's the theme for this quarter? And that changes every quarter in most organizations. So what we're going to focus on to make sure that we focus on what we need to focus on, which seems like double talk, but how many people don't focus on what they need to focus on? But everybody in the organization participates in developing what that theme's going to be for the quarter, so that everybody is part of that, and they develop that from a team standpoint.
Like what's an example of a theme? I'm thinking, boy, if I change themes every quarter, I'd be schizophrenic.
Well, it's the emphasis of this quarter may be that we need to work in-house, and we're going to focus on cutting expenses in-house. That might be one of the things we need to focus on this quarter. Next quarter, it's about taking better care of our current long-term customers. So instead of focusing on bringing in new business, this quarter we're going to focus on making sure that all our people that have been customers for a long time really know that we appreciate them and we go the extra mile for them. But everybody's focused on the same thing that way. It's just a higher level of clarity. Becky talked about clarity earlier. You talked about clarity earlier. I mean, Shackleton didn't say, you know, come for a cruise. It might get chilly.
Yeah.
You know, he was very clear about where they were going and the fact that they actually might not come back.
Right.
And that matters.
Yeah.
That matters. So the focus and just the direction of this is where we're going and this is what we're going to do, I think has a lot of impact.
What else works besides money?
You know, I think going back to this idea of meaning, what's the meaning in what we're doing, and as a leader, having a really good narrative around that. That was a great example of a narrative, what you shared with the employees. You may not have thought of it as a narrative, but what's our story about where we are and why and what's needed? Stories are incredibly powerful for people. If they understand the story that they're a part of, and you gave a great example of that too with the teachers and we're on a journey, that's a narrative about what we're doing and why. And the good news is that's actually more powerful than the money anyway. But you made a good point, Paula, when you said yes, but they trust you. So a narrative cannot be lip service. It has to be the real deal, and people have to trust that leader. But if they trust that leader and they trust that story, it can be incredibly powerful for bonding people together around whatever it is that needs to happen.
Yeah. In our world, one of the three legs we stand on is community. Students will say, well, it feels like a family. And so when folks know that, and students and teachers know that people care about them, that we're in this together, that we're connected by something other than just, I got to get here and make a grade, I got to get here and get a diploma, that they have people that are passionate for them and compassionate for them, and that builds a community, a culture that cares about each other. And there's no amount of money you can put on the table that can motivate when a parent picks up the phone and says, hey, I know this is going on with you and your family. I know this is going on with your student. This kid might have tore up a knee in a football game, and there's 5 families coming to the hospital and walking with them and bringing them meals, or there's something going on. We're in this together and educating our students, and our families get that. They know that, and that's crucial to who we are as a community and as a culture. So that motivates people like you wouldn't believe when there's, you can see, sense, know that they care about what's going on in your life.
And that's so reflective of a good leader, right?
One of the things that Dave said earlier that was almost a throwaway, I think, he said, when the recession hit, no bonuses, we're going to have to cut that out. No raises, sorry, going to have to cut that out. But you almost said under your breath, but nobody's going to get laid off.
Right.
Here's the trade-off. No bonuses, no raises, nobody's leaving.
Yeah.
Right.
We're going to
And
keep
what-
everybody here.
we're a family.
And how important is that?
Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge.
And then what was the impact when they saw their contemporaries at other places starting to get laid off?
yeah.
It was a big impact.
Sure.
One of the things that affect consumer confidence is things being unstable.
Yeah.
And so in our business, you can tell that consumer confidence goes down. People quit buying cars, buying houses, anything. And so, being able to be consistent in what you do with your employees and have a stable approach. Don't be a knee-jerk person. Worst thing in the world is go in there and find a disaster and just go ballistic on them. It just rattles everybody's cage. And so if you can be consistent and know that they can bring you that disaster and you're not going to go ballistic on them, means a lot. And also, when a disaster happens like a recession, that you're consistent, you have a steady hand, and that you're going to handle the situation makes a big difference.
Another great example of that I was just recalling in the early part of the recession when so many people were losing their jobs. Some employers, I think it was particularly in manufacturing, gave employees a choice of everybody takes a cut, you're at 3/4 of your earnings, or we do layoffs. And by far, people want to save their coworkers' jobs, even if it means they take a 25% cut. So I think that speaks to this idea of community, this idea of we're in it together, this idea of that they're affiliated with each other, and that what we're doing here together is more important than just me and just money.
Well, half of the guys on the first adventure with the Endurance with Shackleton came back for another adventure, right back to the Antarctica. Why in the world would they do that? Well, there's this buy-in, there's this culture. They knew that this leader cared about them. In a school, I kind of see that we have more than just the employees. We have students who are like employees to some degree. We have to hold them accountable, and yet we're trying to educate them at the same time. They've all got to trust that we've got their back and that we are about their best interest. That's the way we get buy-in to why are we doing this? Why are we show up here every day and try and figure out how to walk with students and parents? It's because they know we've got their best interest at heart.
I can't remember which graduate school of business it is, but somebody does a survey every 8 or 10 years. But they ask employees, what motivates you? And when they ask the managers always say money, and it's nothing else. It's one thing, money, and that's it. They ask their same employees that work for those managers, and they say things like being in the know of what's going on around here, being a part of the decision-making process, having some input on what my work actually is and who I do it with. So they want to be in on the interviewing process when they add new team members. Now, money's like number 4 on the list of 10. I mean, it's not like it doesn't matter, but it's not number 1. It's 3 or 4 or 5 down the list after these other things that speak to culture. speak to team and camaraderie and being part of something larger than themselves. That's what people want. It's not just more money.
You know, and speaking of accountability, do you all think that if a leader has lost the trust, now the leader has to turn around and say, okay, we're a family, I've got your back, and that trust isn't there, because does the leader need to go? Do you have to bring in a fresh leader to start over again? If the history, if the leader has a history, not of any dishonesty but just a bad history of what's happened with the company.
Chances are whatever happened to put them in that position had something to do with who that leader was and their ability to communicate effectively what's going on around here. Just because things turn sour doesn't mean that leader is going to acquire a new set of communication skills and immediately start speaking with clarity, start telling people on the front end what's going to happen later on. It's not going to start talking about the fact that we view this as we're going to keep everybody and no bonuses, but everybody stays. Having that kind of prospective message is huge. Now, is that leader going to acquire those new skills and change their entire pattern? I doubt it. I doubt it.
It's always fascinating to me with some of our clients. We will go into an environment where they say, well, we are communicating. And it is amazing to me how many times a leader cannot recognize that no, they are not. Just because the words are coming out of their mouth does not mean that the narrative is being told in a way that employees can engage and be motivated and identify with it. And it's a hard thing to tell a leader. You're talking, but you're not communicating.
When we try to get business, it tends to boil down to two things. They got to like us and they got to trust us. And if we don't get there, we're probably not going to be successful. It's also the same thing with our crew. And if we ever lose their trust, it's game over. What else do you have? So.
And to feed off a little bit, as far as how you address people and do this, I jotted something down. When honest mistakes are corrected but not punished, it creates a creative environment. So it just goes back to as far as how you attack them and how you approach them.
We have a lot of salespeople, and salespeople, they have a saying, buyers are liars and sellers are storytellers. and
Great setup.
It's an easy thing to say, but you start looking at your salespeople, you got to realize that some of them believe that you can break some of the rules. And so when you have a salesperson who's breaking the rules, you cannot tolerate it in our industry. Sooner or later it will come to the surface and it'll be something you'll regret that you didn't address.
There's got to be accountability. There has to be accountability, and it has to start from the top down. Organization, whether you're accountable to a not-for-profit board, as I am in my case, all the way down to the youngest student, that have to be accountable. And I explain to kids, whether it's the first day they walk in or whether it's they're getting their cap and gown heading out for graduation, that always with me the facts are friendly. That if I know these are the things that are going on, you're going to get a friendly response. There may be consequences, and sometimes you have to make those decisions, but they understand that I'm accountable as well, and that everybody all the way down the list is accountable, and there's a responsibility that goes with that, and your actions have consequences.
So as we close out, anybody have any final either anecdote or something about motivation, final words of wisdom?
I think there's one thing that we really haven't talked about at all, and that is if you don't know your people and you don't know what motivates them, just ask them, and then come back in a day or two and say, have you thought about that? What really motivates you? And some people will say, well, it's money. Other people will say, what I really want is more time off.
Right, and you know what, as managers, we hear, oh, I need more time off, and immediately I'm thinking, oh gosh, okay, now this person wants to be off 1 day a week or only wants to work 4 hours, and then you say, what does that look like? And they say 2 hours for lunch, you're like, oh, you got it.
Sure.